So if your Erhu sounds like this, instead of this, then it's almost always because of one of three things. So here's the 3-step checklist that I use in order to get good consistent sound all the time. Step number 1, you always want your bow hairs to be nice and flat on the sound box. Not the bamboo, not the wood part, the bow hairs. Nice and flat, so feel that. And we don't want any sort of tilt. We don't want it to tilt upwards, we don't want it to tilt downwards. So here's what it sounds like when it's not completely flat, when it's slightly hovering. And when it's flat. Huge difference in how clear and warm the sound can be. Now, step number 2. So how do we actually know that the bow hairs are flat on the sound box? Sometimes we're playing and then we think that it's nice and flat, but it might come to some sort of a tilt if we're playing something fast. So a good way to feel that out is when you're holding onto the bow. If you can feel the bow hairs make contact with the edge of the sound box, right over here where the snakeskin protector meets the snakeskin. Right over here. You want to imagine that the last bow hair down over here is always making contact with that edge and then making contact with your string. So flat right at that edge, then making contact with the string. Flat inner string, flat outer string. You're always going to get a good sound. Flat edge string, flat edge outer string. One thing is you do want to make sure that your bow doesn't tilt downwards. So you can feel this out by just picking up your bow, placing it down, and feeling that pocket where it touches that edge and then touches that inner string. Touches that edge and then touches that outer string. And now step number 3. So you might notice that sometimes when you're playing, your sound quality sort of changes. And that's simply because the angle of the bow has changed. So step 3 is just simply bow in a straight line. Now, if we're focused on the right side of the bow, it's going to be really hard for us to gauge whether or not we are bowing a straight line. We might tell ourselves, oh, we are bowing straight, but in actuality, angle is kind of deviating. So easiest way to check for that, look at the left side. Look at the tip of the bow. So if we take a look at the bow over here on the left side, we can see how that there's a gap in between the bow hairs and the very, very edge of the sound box on the left side. The more internally rotated it is, the wider that gap. And the more parallel it is with the sound box, the smaller that gap. And I usually shoot for around an inch or 3/4 of an inch to get the cleanest sound. So as long as we can maintain that same distance between the bow hairs and the edge of the sound box on the left side, then that basically tells us that the angle of the bow is never changing. If that distance starts to increase or decrease, that means our bow is starting to change in its angle. Compared to So being able to be aware of all these 3 things will take some time to get used to, but I can almost guarantee that if you do this 3-step checklist, your sound will start to improve. So let's go through the steps one more time. Take your bow, place it down flat onto the sound box. Not the bamboo, not the wooden part of the bow, the bow hairs. Nice and flat. Step number 2, make contact with that edge of the sound box. So that's to do with your tilt, right? We want to make sure that we can find that edge right over here. Then make contact with your string. So let's use the inner string. Then looking at the distance between your bow hairs and the sound box and making sure that that travels in a straight path. Now, if you enjoyed this video and found these tips and tricks helpful, then I definitely recommend checking out Erhu Labs. Link is below.